León Ferrari in São Paulo, a virtual show presented by Galeria Nara Roesler to celebrate the centennial of the great Argentinian artist, is a selection of works made by Ferrari while he was living in São Paulo between 1976 and 1991. Ferrari moved to São Paulo in 1976 following the military coup that imposed a long-lasting, violent, and obnoxious dictatorship in Argentina. Feeling the risk of becoming object of prosecution by the regime, he settled in Brazil alongside his family. His son Ariel, a political activist, stayed in the country and was ultimately abducted and murdered by the military. This unimaginable and unspeakable tragedy marked the beginning of Ferrari's life in Brazil. During his Brazilian period, Ferrari was able to reinvent his entire production, from drawings to sculpture to performance. After having conceived his most emblematic graphic language and his first sculptures in Argentina during the early 1960s, Ferrari had abandoned his object-driven production, rather focusing on politically theatrical performances such as the famous literary collage against the Catholic Church, Palabras Ajenas, in 1967. But the overwhelming tragedy of his son's assassination brought Ferrari to drawing again. In 1976, while trying to reach international support in his claim for justice around the disappearance of his sons, Ferrari conceived a new typology of drawing, unprecedented in his work. These drawings, resembling repetitive tongues of fire, seem abstract metaphorical depictions of hell, of the consuming and unjust fire of hell. Having produced his first metal-based sculptures in the early 1960s, tangled, convoluted accumulations of metal debris into volumes often linked to informalism, in São Paulo, Ferrari reconceived his production through a series of prismatic-like volumes resembling cages and jails, pristine in their technical materialization and often monumental, elements for performative actions. One can only imagine the effect of the modern city, the prevalence of Brazilian concrete forms over his creative imagination, to understand how the former convoluted, baroque, opaque language of his sculpture becomes pristine and transparent, like geometric, parallelepiped volumes made of minute metal threads, like clean, graphic lines conflating in the void. Through cyanotype prints, such as the ones used by architects, Leon Ferrari also addressed the absurd of modern life in a striking repertoire of works depicting configurations where a single type, a figure, appears multiplied as to constitute a crowd. Radical representations of solitudes within multitude that one might refer to his experience of the radical modern cosmopolis that São Paulo is, so different than the 19th century-like capital of Argentina. Ferrari's long-lasting interest in language, his investigation on the power of language as well as on the gestural materiality of language, was also entirely renewed during his Brazilian exile. Emphasizing the use of reproductive techniques, xeroxes, letra set collages, and offset editions, Ferrari produced a series of alphabets, charts of signs, zoomorphic codes, imaginary collection of letters and numerals, like a classificatory canon occhiali of the world where nature, sex, chess, politics, and language fuse. He revisited his calligraphic repertoire from the 1960s, amplifying it through a practice of painting that was also totally new in his production. But the most enduring and long-lasting legacy of the Brazilian period in Ferrari's work is the striking reinvention of collage that manifested in his series of rereading of the Bible, in his systematic iconographic deconstruction of the horrors of power, in his denunciation of human extermination and the Holocaust. Often conflating the sacred and the taboo, sex and religion, eroticism and war, His Brazilian collage production is one of the most systematic deconstructions of Judeo-Christian cosmology ever attempted by an artist in the Americas. Among these works, notable is a series of Last Judgments, animal performances, in the sense that placing a reproduction of the Last Judgment at the bottom of a bird cage inhabited by living birds, Leon Ferrari transformed some of the most sublime Western Christian works of art in formless collages covered by animal excrements. Western megalography, the glorious depictions of heaven like an unworldly imaginaries, is overcome by critical reparography, the minute, the insignificant, the animal, the rotten, the debris, excrement, and worldly reality. One can truly argue that Leon Ferrari found in Brazil a second youth, one that will forever be at the very core of his most significant artistic legacy.